Well, good morning, Center of Hope. It is July the 6th, and I have a few thoughts to share with you today. I want to start off by talking about something that I hear on a regular basis from people, both in the news and from people talking about it. It all has to do with this COVID stuff, but it's this idea that we are living in unprecedented times. And I can't help but think that when people say we're living in unprecedented times, that there's a little bit of ignorance in that, maybe some arrogance too, because when it comes down to it, we only have our time that we live in. We haven't lived in any other time, and so um, even if we are to look at history, we can only get a slight pulse of how things were in other times, and we don't really get the full scope of it. Certainly, we're living in unprecedented times for us, but I don't know if that's necessarily unprecedented times of all time. Um, and as I got thinking about this, I was reminded of a psalm by the sons of Korah. Psalm 46, it says, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Now, as I began to think about this particular psalm, there were two things that really came out in this psalm in terms of, um, you know, analogy or something that's similar to what we're dealing with today. First, the sons of Korah talk about this idea of the earth giving way, the mountains being moved, the waters roaring and foaming, and the mountains trembling at the swelling of the waters. And to me, that seems like a picture of an earthquake. We have that idea that the earth is giving way. We have this idea that the mountain is falling off into the sea. We have this idea of waters roaring and foaming, and that kind of makes me think that that's the tsunami effect of an earthquake. For people at the time that this was written, probably one of the most calamitous type of events that they could have experienced would have been an earthquake. Sure, they would have had famines and they would have had war and so on and so forth, but probably the biggest physical calamity or catastrophe would have been something like an earthquake. And their ability to recover from an earthquake would have been far worse than what we have today with all of our modern technology and such. But as I got thinking about that, I thought, what is the physical calamity or catastrophe that we're dealing with? And the answer is COVID-19. It is a calamity. It's a catastrophe. It is something, as you know, it's killed like, what is it, 600,000 people now? There's over 11 million cases. It's the type of thing that can bring anxiety and fear. Just like for the sons of Korah, the idea of an earthquake could bring anxiety and fear, so COVID-19 can bring that. And I think that's a lot of the reason people are saying we live in unprecedented times. They're feeling fearful, they're feeling scared. But even before the sons of Korah mention this calamitous type of event, they say, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. It's not that God is far off in the midst of trouble, in the midst of catastrophe. God is actually present in the midst of it. This is actually very different, a contrast to many of the ancient religious ideas. Some of the ancient religions believed that, if they believed in a god or gods, the gods would create the world and the universe and then basically kind of blow everything off and go and do their own thing and leave the world to its own devices to take care of itself. And, you'd have to go and, if you wanted the gods to help, you would have to give them sacrifices and libations in order to make them respond. But the sons of Korah say that God is our refuge and our strength, that he is present in trouble. He is a present help in trouble. What's interesting is this passage goes on to talk about to move from like physical calamities to political unrest. And again, that's something that we're familiar with today with civil wars in Syria, with the rise of the human rights movement again in the States after the killing of George Floyd. We have political unrest. Maybe some of you have heard about that place in Seattle called Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where people had tried to build their own little state in the midst of a city. And that's, of course, obviously politically motivated and driven. What did the sons of Korah say? They say that God is in the midst of the city, his habitation, and that city will not be moved. If God is in the midst of us, we will not be moved. Now, again, this psalm is probably talking about the city of Jerusalem at that point, which was kind of the place where the presence of God was in their temple. And because God was there, they will not be moved. God would take care of them. And so even though the nations are raging, even though the kingdoms are tottering, even though there's political unrest, God is still with us. And actually, it says that his voice is uttered and the earth melts. That's just a picture of how much power God has, that he can simply speak and things change. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And then it makes this interesting statement. It says, come behold the works of the Lord, for he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. What it's actually saying is God's actually sovereign in all of these things. Now, I don't want to get into this idea of whether God causes these things to happen, that God brings these things upon us. That's something for another time. But what I want to suggest is God is not blindsided or sideswiped by any of the calamity that happens, whether it's physical catastrophes, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes, earthquakes, whatever it is. God is actually in the midst of all of this, and he is working to bring about his ways in the midst of it. Now, I said to you that I don't think that we live in unprecedented times, but I want to suggest to you that there is something that could happen that I think would be unprecedented, and it's this. This passage says, be still and know that I am God. Now, the Hebrew word still there, the Hebrew word actually talks about this idea of sinking in, to withdraw, to relax. So the challenge from the sons of Korah is, in the midst of all of this craziness going on, withdraw from it. Sink into the presence of God. Be still and relax. And in the midst of that, our angst and our anxiety about what is going on will be removed as we are reminded that God is sovereign, that God knows what's going on, and that God is working amongst all of it. God is our refuge and our strength, a present help in trouble. God will help when morning dawns. God will not be moved. And because God is in us, we too can live in a place we're not moved, regardless of what's going on. Today, I want to challenge you to take a few moments to be still, sit in the presence of God, and be reminded that he is sovereign, that he is over all of this, and he is working his purposes through all of it. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is our fortress and our strength. Have a good day.